What's good, everybody? This is TKC, and you're watching Waffle Innit. Let me tell you, this is dumb because this is really mic, you all know that. But you want to know something that was dumber?
World War I. Now I know all wars are dumb. World wars, especially stupid. But this was a beauty. Because it wasn't a war over ideology. They were all empires, basically the same form of government. It wasn't even a freedom struggle, because if anything, the world was more colonized and under control, just of the winners. And it wasn't a war over natural resources either. Because let's be real, mainland Europe in 1914 did not have many natural resources. It was a just it was just a big petty ego conflict where the most powerful people in the world were itching to go to war. Now to start with history's favorite country, France. France had lost a war to Germany over 40 years ago and lost a chunk of land called Alsace-Lorraine, and they were just waiting to take revenge. I mean, they had plans of a war against Germany and strategies lined up even at a relatively peaceful time. So, if that's not wanting to go to war, I don't know what is. Now, moving on to Germany. Well, as the meme goes, when does Germany not want to go to war? They just won a couple of wars and had felt really good about themselves. They also had one of the best navies in the world and they were itching to test it out. They too, like France, had a battle strategy lined up even before any rumors of a war. And their strategy was even more ambitious. They wanted to take down France and its ally Russia at the same time. And next, it's Germany's southern neighbor, Austria, or as then known, the Austro Hungarian Empire. Now, this country wanted war because their prince was assassinated. Fair reason. But they also wanted war because their colonies were slowly ripping themselves apart and claiming independence. And they wanted to galvanize any forces of nationalism to ensure that their empire survives. Well, as it turned out, that backfired. Next, Russia, like Austria, was a failed state. They had nothing going for them. They were poor, they were famished, and the people were revolting. And so they hoped a war would help unite people in support of the king. That too, well, as we know, didn't go too well. And Britain? Well, Britain just went to war because Germany was at war and they wanted to go to war against Germany. And the reason they picked is that Germany invaded Belgium, which means Belgium's friend, Britain, at that time, had to declare war on Germany. I mean, imagine if that happened now. That government would be ridiculed so much. Well, and as you can see, there's just a ego conflict. And the people then, well, they thought it was a glorious war. Home by Christmas, they said, with loads of eligible men just enlisting, hoping to bring glory to the motherland. As it turned out, it was a 4-year war stuck in trenches. And what they got was not honor, it was shell shock. A generation which is called the lost generation because so many people went to the battlefield and just a fraction returned home.
Well, what makes things worse was World War One also had the worst group of winners. The US, they wanted nothing to do with it because the people of America had had enough and they wanted to go back to being isolationist. The French and the British, well, they are the worst winners ever because they placed terms so harsh on the losers, especially Germany, that they basically planted the seeds of World War II and Hitler with their Treaty of Versailles. Germany was humiliated and the empire was broken down and replaced by a weak, volatile democracy which was just waiting for a tyrant to take over. Austria, the reason the war had started, well, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was history and was carved up into 4 or 5 different countries. Russia, well, they had the worst effect. Not only were they beaten in the war, while being in the Allied powers, they also had a revolution, they had multiple revolutions, they had a long civil war, and the king was shot dead by the new rulers. They also had famine, and Russia, well, Russia is always cold. Well, so nothing good came from World War One and the so-called war to end all wars. Now, if you're laughing right now thinking how dumb our ancestors were, I tell you, today is eerily similar to them. Let's have a look. A bunch of world leaders fighting it off on Twitter, saying the word nuclear without any distinction whatsoever. I mean, we have a man in the White House who calls for peace, but well, we know really what bringing honor to the motherland actually means. It means war, swift and glorious. And as we know, war is never swift or glorious. Today, countries look like they're waiting to go for war. Be it India and Pakistan, be it China and Taiwan, or be it Russia and Ukraine, who are already at war, and NATO coming to the aid of Ukraine. I mean, we know how UK is at war readiness where its military is concerned. We know Germany is militarizing, I wouldn't say like never before, but at an extremely alarming rate. France is ready to go to war. And well, what do I say about the US? They will, of course, swoop in to win the war again. Hopefully not. We also have the Middle East, where there is the Iran crisis going on. There's, of course, the Israeli-Palestine war that's still raging. And why is all this happening? Well, if World War I was dumb, World War III is its stupider little cousin. Because this too is just going to be an ego conflict. If it happens, right now, it's just because world leaders want to boost the popularity ratings by bringing glory to the country. And the worst part, people will fall for it as they did 100 years ago. Right now, we see the MAGA movement sweeping the US. And what does glory to the motherland really mean? War. And well, India, Pakistan, as we've seen, when there's a conflict, the countries are united against the enemy. China and Taiwan, well, China just wants Taiwan and the semiconductor industry, of course. So there is other stakes involved. And well, NATO, that's just a button waiting to be pushed and launching a world war. An attack on one is an attack on all. Well, that's just a scale up button waiting to be pressed. And let's hope it's not. Now let's see, if there's a world war, unlike World War I, where people dug in, built tanks, and unleashed ounces of gas on their opponents, I know that sounds hilarious. World War III will be buttons destroying cities in minutes, and when the dust settles, there might not be a world for a World War IV. So next time you see a WhatsApp forward or someone chatting about glorious war bringing honor to the country, remind them about World War I. Remember the lost generation. Remember a bunch of mothers crying for their children who went to bring glory to the country and never returned. Remember the people who returned but were traumatized for life and shell shock. And most importantly, remember this time it's going to be a lot worse. Because nuclear war, it destroys everything and it leads to radiation poisoning. So even if you do survive, and if you don't have cancer, you might just end up having children with 8 legs and 17 fingers. War is not cool. World War I was dumb, and World War III is going to be dumber. Thank you everybody. I'm TKC, and until next time.